So we're going to stay in West Virginia, Karl, and this is a really fun one. This might be my favorite story of the night. Not because I think it's the most believable, but because it's just incredibly weird.
And unlike Bigfoot or Nessie, the Mothman isn't just famous because people claim they saw it. It's famous because people believe it was connected to one of the worst disasters in American history. November 15th, 1966. Everything begins just outside Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Around 11:30 at night, two couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallett, are driving near an abandoned World War II TNT manufacturing site known locally as the TNT area. It's dark, remote, the kind of place that already feels unsettling before anything happens. Then the headlights catch something standing near one of the old concrete structures, right?
And according to them, this was not a person at all.
The witnesses described a creature about 6 to 7 feet tall, gray in color, broad shoulders, large folded wings, and the feature everyone remembers was two enormous glowing red eyes. Not little reflections, not tiny pinpoints. They said the eyes were bright enough to shine in their headlights.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but that's already enough information. No, for me at least, just drive away. No follow-up questions. Get the heck out of there, turn around, and don't come back.
Well, that's exactly what they did. They sped away. But according to the witnesses, the creature opened its wings, took off, and followed them. Some reports claim they reached speeds approaching 100 miles per hour. They insisted the creature kept pace with the car. Without appearing to flap its wings much at all, eventually it broke off the pursuit. The couple reported the encounter to local police that same night.
So, Karl, let me ask you, is there any reports of a millionaire playboy living in West Virginia, possibly with his parents, being killed at a young age, that could have been a midnight vigilante?
Batman.
Right. Yeah, and imagine being that officer. It's questioning this individual. So you're telling me a giant flying man chased your car?
Yeah, exactly. Here's where the story really gains momentum, though, okay? Within days, other residents began reporting similar encounters. Some claimed the creature stood silently in fields. Others reported seeing it perched in trees or flying overhead. Volunteer firefighter Newell Partridge reported strange buzzing sounds around his television before allegedly seeing glowing red eyes outside his property. His dog ran towards the lights and never returned. Now, is that proof? No, but it became another piece of the growing legend. Over the next 13 months, Point Pleasant became the center of national attention. Reporters arrived. Curious tourists flooded into town. People began attributing all kinds of strange events to the Mothman. Odd lights, phone interference, unexplained noises, even sightings of mysterious men in black suits, which opened an entirely different rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I love how these stories always begin to snowball. So it starts with, I saw something weird, and then suddenly it's UFOs and some government agents, radio interference, dogs disappearing. Everybody's got a cousin who knows a guy that saw something, and it's just going crazy from there.
Right, and the men in black, yet again, showing up, right?
They're everywhere.
Then came the event that forever tied the Mothman to tragedy. On December 15th, 1967, just over a year after the first sightings, the Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Galapagos, Ohio, collapsed during an evening rush hour. 46 people lost their lives. It remains one of the deadliest bridge disasters in American history. Investigators later determined the collapse resulted from the failure of a single suspension component, a small defect in an eye bar which link that went unnoticed and ultimately caused a catastrophic structural failure. There's no evidence that anything supernatural caused the collapse, however, but because the Mothman sightings happened in the months leading up to it, the legend became permanently linked to the disaster.
Some people even believe the Mothman was a warning. Others think it was simply just an eerie coincidence. And those two ideas have really been debated over time. So it's gained so much attention that, and you and I have talked about this last week, where it was a book, it was a movie with Richard Gere, and it depicts that bridge scene at the very end. And he thinks there's something happening. He knows that this bridge is about to collapse and there's everybody on there. And it's just a crazy sequence of events.
Well, what I find fascinating about this thing is it's also been seen during other tragic events throughout history, such as 9/11.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I see it as a harbinger of death. So these people definitely saw something that scared the living hell out of them. It kept up with a car that was going over 100 miles per hour. And I really believe, my personal theory is that it's a demonic entity that is kind of, like I said earlier, like a harbinger of death, if you will.
To your point, it's maybe this entity is the direct result. Maybe they're the one controlling it. Maybe they're the one doing the destruction and terrible things. My point of view, just playing devil's advocate, is maybe on the other side of that is a warning. It's a messenger. It's saying this is about to happen. Get out of the way. Whatever. Take shelter. Whatever it may be. So it's an interesting theory all the way around. And I think and we're going to go deeper. But out of everything, I think this might be the most accurate possible, truthful monster.
It's not just 1, 2, 3. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of sightings of this thing. I mean, it really had the entire town shook up and scared to death.
Yeah. So if we're talking explanations, is it a large bird, specifically the sandhill crane? These birds can stand nearly 5 feet tall. They have wingspans over 6 feet. They also have reddish patches around their eyes, and if you encountered one, especially at night, it could absolutely startle you. So that's another explanation or theory.
Especially in headlights, right? And especially if you're already scared. And if you're not expecting to see any bird, there's this huge thing standing in front of your car. I mean, the crane theory isn't perfect, though. Witnesses consistently described glowing red eyes, not just red markings. Some insisted the creature had no visible head, with the eyes appearing directly on its chest. Others maintained that it flew in ways unlike any bird they'd ever seen. Again, memory is imperfect, especially during frightening situations, but those details are why these people they're continuing to discuss this case even to this day.
Yeah, and the legend exploded thanks to John Keel. We talked about him a few weeks ago. He actually published the Mothman prophecies. This was back in 1975. So he wasn't just interested in the creature itself. He also talked about UFOs, strange lights, psychic experiences, and other unexplained phenomena. Back in 2002, Hollywood adapted this story. So that was the Mothman prophecies. Again, that was starring Richard Gere. Now, the movie takes a lot of creative liberties. It's more a psychological thriller than a documentary, but it did introduce the legend to an entirely new population.
Which means there are now millions of people who know what the Mothman is without realizing the actual sightings all trace back to one small town in West Virginia. Today, Point Pleasant has completely embraced the legend. There's a Mothman museum, a 12-foot-tall stainless steel Mothman statue, an annual Mothman festival that draws thousands of visitors, restaurants, shops, souvenirs. The town turned one of America's strangest mysteries into a tourist destination.
Yeah, honestly, good for them. So if you're a tourist, you come in, you're looking for some big, giant winged monsters, why not buy a t-shirt and some pins,
Exactly.
Yeah. In your opinion, final verdict on the Mothman: cryptid, alien, bird, harbinger of disaster, where do you land?
I'm going to go with harbinger of death here, because this thing was seen right before major disasters, everything from 9/11 to the collapse of the Silver Point Bridge. So this thing is outrunning cars over 100 miles per hour. It's something supernatural in nature. And I really believe these people saw something that defies a normal explanation.
So we talk about the bridge, the explanation there, as far as the investigation, that can kind of be explained. Then there's the eyewitnesses that recount what they saw. So
Right.
I think those both can be true without it having to be a giant, winged creature.
I mean, that said, if I ever see glowing red eyes standing in the middle of the road, I'm not stopping to identify the species, okay?
Yeah, probably a solid life decision there. I would definitely agree with you. Leaving West Virginia now, so let's come back closer to home here.
Okay.
Down south, deep in the swamps, and we're going to talk about the Gatorman. So Florida's own Gatorman, and we've talked about giant apes, lake monsters, flying humanoids. Now it's time to come home because there's one place where people will absolutely believe something like a half man, half alligator existing in the swamps here in Florida. It's out of this world. It's crazy.
Wow. I mean, honestly, Florida has already had enough headlines as it is. If somebody told me we have a 7-foot alligator walking upright, I'd probably ask, which county?
Duval. Exactly. And that's where this is interesting. So it's unlike Bigfoot. It's unlike Mothman. There isn't just one Gatorman story. There's several. Go figure. There's dozens, actually. Different states, different decades, different names, but they all share the same basic idea. So it's a large humanoid creature covered in scales with an alligator-like head living deep in the swamps and marshes. Wow. Sounds like a couple exes maybe we've dated.
Exactly.
So probably the most famous version comes from the neighboring Louisiana. It's known as the Honey Island Swamp Monster. The first widely publicized reports appeared back in the early 1960s, although locals claim stories go back further. Witnesses describe the creatures around 7 feet tall, covered in gray hair with reptile-like skin, webbed fingers, and glowing yellow or amber eyes. Some reports even claimed it had left 3-foot fingerprints and footprints measuring more than a foot long.
So basically, Bigfoot and an alligator had the world's weirdest collaboration.
And the name most associated with the Honey Island Swamp Monster is Harlan Ford. Ford was a retired air traffic controller who claimed that in 1963, he and a friend found enormous footprints in the swamp. Later, Ford said he actually saw the creatures on multiple occasions. He even cast several of the footprints in plaster. These casts still actually exist today. Now, whether they prove anything, that's another question, but certainly, they fueled public interest. So Florida has its own versions, of course, and over the years, there have been scattered reports, from the Everglades, Big Cypress Preserve, remote swamp areas throughout the state. Descriptions do vary, but most include a human-shaped body, a long alligator snout, green or gray scales, between 7 or 8 feet tall, and an incredibly powerful odor. Again, smelly monsters. What is going on?
Right, exactly.
Apparently, every cryptid either smells terrible or witness collectively decided that deodorant and showering wasn't going to happen that day. So, I don't know.
All right, to be fair, if you lived in a swamp your whole life, you probably wouldn't smell like lavender either, right?
Yeah, probably not. And so here's why these stories are so believable to some people. The Everglades cover roughly 1.5 million acres. They're so remote that very few people have ever visited. Dense sawgrass, mangroves, cypress forests, waterways that stretch for miles. It's easy to understand how some of these people could be disoriented, they get lost, or mistake something that they only saw for a second.
And Florida wildlife already looks prehistoric. You've got 12-foot alligators, massive pythons, wild hogs, panthers, mosquitoes the size of drones.
So there's skeptical explanations to this as well, and they're pretty straightforward. So an alligator, partially standing in shallow water, black bears, misidentified people, humans wearing camouflage, poor visibility, or simply stories growing with each retelling of them.
Right. Because once one person tells a story around a campfire, the next version gets a little bigger, right? The creature gets taller, the teeth get longer, the eyes glow brighter. And by the 10th retelling, it's wrestling airboats.
Yeah, it's telephone, telegram, tell a friend. Even today, every so often, a video surfaces online claiming to show some mysterious swamp creatures. Usually it's grainy, usually it's far away, and after a few days, someone identifies it as a person. Maybe they just had too much moonshine and they're out for a midnight stroll in the swamp.
Right.
Sometimes it's a bear or just an oddly shaped tree, a stump, which honestly, this is really Florida in a nutshell for you.
I mean, imagine being a tree. You've been standing there for over 100 years. Suddenly, you're on YouTube. Local man captures terrifying swamp beast. Nope, just oak.
Florida man. Yeah, and I think Gatorman survives for the same reason Bigfoot really did. And especially here in Florida. I mean, there's so many stories. It's crazy. But the environment does say a lot of the storytelling. When you're surrounded by fog, dark water, animal sounds you've never heard before, and you know there's real predators nearby, your imagination starts filling in the blanks. It starts to get a little bit darker. This doesn't mean witnesses are lying necessarily. It just means that our brains are incredibly good at trying to identify potential threats. Sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes they're just incomplete. It's that simple.
All right. Final verdict here. Gatorman. Real or...
So I don't think there's actually half man, half gator, but I do think in Florida, it is very possible for some friggin' weirdo just to dress up in some weird gator stuff. He skins a gator, wears the costume, and just, I don't know, goes around on a fan boat with a bright light or something. Like, that is so plausible. And for our listeners outside of Florida, I know this seems far-stretched, like a far-fetched story, but literally, that's not even the craziest things that happen here in Florida at all. So I think it's somewhat plausible. I just don't think it's a half gator, half man.
And plenty of people have heard about Florida man.
There's a whole
Florida
documentary
man
on
this,
it.
Florida man that.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on and on about almost a daily occurrence of Florida man doing something around here. So You're absolutely right. There could be this guy dressing up in these costumes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's your brother's, mother's, best friend's, cousins, uncles, in-laws, and they all live in shacks on the swamp. Tonight, we've covered a little bit of everything: giant primates, ancient lake monsters, towering alien-like beings, winged humanoids, and swamp creatures, of course. Some have hundreds of witnesses, some have thousands, and some have no definitive proof whatsoever. So why are these stories continuing to survive generation after generation? That's what we'll talk about as we wrap up this episode here. After all of that, Karl, what's your takeaway? I mean, we've looked at all these stories spanning centuries, thousands of eyewitnesses, as we've said, millions of acres of wilderness, and decades of investigations. Yet here we are, still without definitive proof that any of these creatures actually exist.
But I don't think that means these stories are pointless. In fact, I think they're really fascinating because every single cryptid tells us something, maybe not about monsters, but about people.
You know, and some of these legends probably started genuinely because people thought they saw something. There was something that they couldn't explain. Others grew through word of mouth, and some became part of local culture, and eventually the stories become bigger than the creatures themselves.
Think about it. Bigfoot has become a pop culture icon, right? Nessie, practically Scotland's unofficial mascot. The Mothman has his own museum. People travel from all over the world to stand where someone once claimed they saw something strange. Whether the creature was real almost becomes secondary. The mystery is what keeps people coming back.
Yeah. I also think there's something deeper here. People like believing that there's still some mystery left in the world with satellites, GPS, drones, trail cameras. It sometimes feels like every corner of Earth actually is being explored. Cryptids remind us that maybe, just maybe, that some of these unanswered mysteries are still out there. There's still some unanswered questions.
And honestly, if the answer ends up being completely ordinary, the search itself is fun because curiosity is part of being human.
So we do want to hear from our audience as well, because there was a lot to cover. But which cryptids do they actually believe, has the strongest case? Is there one that we left out that deserves its own episode? Have any of you experienced something like this? Has there been something in the woods, in the water, somewhere else? Something that you can't really explain? Tell us about it.
Leave us a comment, because some of our favorite topics have actually come from you guys. And who knows, maybe your story ends up on a future episode.
If you enjoyed tonight's episode, be sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, share with someone who still thinks Bigfoot is just blurry because he values his privacy.
Or someone who refuses to go camping after watching this. We completely understand, okay?
And as always, we really appreciate every one of you. Thank you so much for all your support and staying the night with us while we talk about some cool cryptids.
Remember, just because something hasn't been proven yet doesn't automatically make it impossible. But it also doesn't make it true either. Stay curious, ask questions, follow the evidence.
Yeah, and if you're hiking through the woods, if you're cruising through the Everglades on a fan boat, if you're standing on the shores of Loch Ness, maybe keep your camera ready, just in case. You never know.
And we'll see you next time on
The Midnight Debrief. Goodbye.
Very nice. All right.
That was wrong.
Where's that wine?
Yeah.